All right. So we are going to re-listen to an episode from season 1 on children. We interviewed Beth Keller. What do you recall from the conversation that we had with Beth?
I really liked that episode, and our listeners really liked that episode. That was probably one of the bigger ones that we got as much feedback and just general conversation about once that dropped. The biggest things from that episode, 2 things. Number one, and they're kind of tied together, was I think you guys were talking about working with children to tie their shoes and get them out of the house, and kind of what that process is.
Yeah.
Directly tied into that was the realization, once you actually talked through it and are given some alternatives, the realization that children between the ages of 4 or 5 to 12, 13-ish wake up in the morning, are talked at for 14 hours and then go to bed in the sense of, good morning, it's time to get out of bed. Now it's time to brush your teeth. Now you need to put on your clothes. Now you need to eat your breakfast. Now you need to get in the car. Now you need to welcome to school. Now you need to sit down. Make sure you go to the bathroom. Take your backpacks out. Get your pencils out. Okay, put your backpacks on. It's time to get on the bus. Sit down on the bus. Don't talk on the bus. Don't yell on the. Don't do the. Get off the bus. Get home. Eat your dinner. Eat all of your food. Why didn't you do that? Did you? Holy shit, Brant. It's just, and that realization of just taking 50% of that conversation or of that daily dialogue and turning it into dialogue, turning it into question and answer, turning it into just things like, no wonder by the time they get to 14 years old, they go, fine. How was your day?
Yeah.
Good. Like, you haven't taught them how to have dialogue because they've just been talked at for 8 years.
They've just been talked at and told what to do
what to do with no. So it's just, and obviously that's an extreme case, but maybe it's, I don't know. I don't mean to say that every teacher is this demanding a-hole, and so are parents, but generally speaking, I can relate to it for sure. What about you? What do you remember from that episode? What sticks out to you?
I do remember that as well. The really weird talking at them and not talking with them. I think it was just asking open-ended questions or giving that time for them to respond and acknowledging that I'm listening to them. From that interview, I do that with my kids now. I even do it with adults, right? Of just asking questions and acknowledging that I'm recognizing what they're saying goes a long way with them feeling heard and being listened to. And it's a small thing, but it goes a long way. So I think that's something I've taken away from that episode.
The other piece of this episode that stuck out to me that I do implement as often as humanly possible is the obstruction of the cell phone. And that kind of started us off, I think, in this podcast that we're doing, is the obstruction and the interference of the cellular telephone, which we kind of touched on throughout season 1, season 2, and even season 3. And I think that's where it kind of stuck with me. And we first brought it up is it's the end of the day, and all of a sudden you're asking your children how your day was while you're staring at your phone. And just put the damn thing down and look at your children and give them your attention. Show them that you're listening to them.
Yeah, that was a big piece of this episode, which, again, I am constantly reminding myself to put my phone down.
Yep. All right. Well, so this is something a little bit new for us. We're just going to bring back a couple episodes. I think we have a good enough library right now that we don't want these to be lost. So these we're going to do this a couple times this season, and we'll see how it goes for next season. If we want to keep doing it, we might sprinkle them in throughout our little breaks too, and you just might get a little surprise, a little re-listen to some of our episodes. They're good. We're happy with them. We're very proud of them. So we're gonna kick them back out to you.
Yeah, let's give it a re-listen.
A re-listen.
Bum, bum, bum.
Here we go. Ready, play. This is a podcast about children, about listening. It all comes down to because I said so.
Because I said so.
Because I said so. Because I said so.
I feel like if we compare my childhood to parenting kids today, listening is definitely much more prevalent than it was before. But do we need to be doing more? I don't know. It's a good question.
And should we? Do we need to be doing it more? Should we be doing it?
And what's the benefit of it?
Exactly. What's the benefit? Why should we keep doing it? I'm really excited about this podcast. I say that about every podcast, but I think that's okay because I'm still excited about it. We might get a little sensitive with this one, and that's okay. And it's not just about parenting, but it's about interacting with children. And as you know, for the sake, I think, of this podcast, children are 5 to 15, 17 years old, that developmental stage, preteen into teen, that sort of range of different aspects of listening to your children.
Yeah. And you talk about it being a sensitive subject. It's anytime we're talking about someone's techniques or ways of doing things that might be different than yours, these are just our opinions. These are our thoughts, our insights. And this is looking at listening, because that's what our podcast is about. And how does listening apply to parenting? We're going to mash those two up and explore the area in between.
I love it. Because I said so, let's start this podcast.
All right, let's start it. From conversations to the natural world to complete silence, so many of us focus on what's next rather than what is happening now. I'm Listening is a podcast that dissects the importance of listening.
I'm Drew Richmond.
And I'm Brant Christofferson.
And this is I'm Listening, a podcast simply about the skill of listening.
Our guest today is a certified positive discipline educator. She has a long experience as a teacher, educator, parent, and she's an outstanding coach. Beth Keller of Beth Keller Coaching. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Do you hear this often, Beth, where people say, well, when I was a kid, it happened this way, and that's how I want to do it, or that's not how I want to do it? What kind of things do you hear from adults that, are engaging with kids on what they should or shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, of course. There's always that rhetoric of, well, look how good I turned out just fine. Right? Nobody listened to me. Nobody asked me what I thought. Nobody, cared. It was just like, do what you're told and that's the end. And I turned out just fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would push on that a little bit and be like, but did you? I don't say that always. I know.
My therapist says I turned out great. I mean,
right? I would say that I think I have turned out pretty well, but I also had to do a whole lot of work to get to that point. So sure, there's always that rhetoric of I'm the adult, they're the kid, I'm big, you're little, right? I think there's a lot of adults that are stuck in the middle of, they see that what maybe they experienced or what they see happening or what they've, see other adults doing, it doesn't work for them, doesn't sit right with them, doesn't feel like the thing, but they don't always know what to do instead. I mean, that's where some of my work comes in. What's the tool, right? We can't take away something unless we replace it with something else. That's the space where a lot of people feel like they swing to this maybe overly kind, overly gentle space of I'll just listen endlessly. And that doesn't work either, right? Because for mutually respectful listening to happen, it has to work for me and it has to work for the kid. When I get what I need, it's respectful to me in the situation. When the kid gets what they need, it's respectful to them. And so if we swing to I'm just going to tell you what to do, listen up, or just this over accommodating, we're actually not falling into the mutually respectful space. And so I think that's what I mostly hear from adults is that they recognize it's not what they want, but they don't know what to do instead.
We started off this whole podcast by saying the words, because I said so. And that has rung with me of just this idea that just because I said it, it needs to get done and it's right. My wife and I have removed that term from parenting to turn that into, again, I loved what you just said about it's a tool, right? So if you're going to stop doing something, you got to replace it with what you're going to use. You can't just leave that void. So we go into explaining why.
Yeah. And there are times, I think we recently had one where it just got to the point where I said it is just, I am the mom and this is what needs to happen right now. And I can't always give you a, bullet pointed PowerPoint presentation on why exactly we are going to the library first instead of the grocery store first or whatever, right? Yeah. This is just what works best right now. And this is what we're doing. Here we go.
Yep. There's no need to deliberate over everything or get into everything. It's okay. But it is built upon that mutual respect, right? As we're looking at this, we're taking our podcast, I'm Listening, and we want to apply that to working with kids, or for us, being parents. What are the benefits? What do we get when we apply listening to working with kids?
Sure. So I mentioned that I have background in positive discipline, And one of the key tenets of that is that people do better when they feel better. I know that for me, when I feel listened to, right? Maybe I'm not agreed with, maybe what I want doesn't ultimately happen, but when I feel really listened to, that's encouraging to me, because what that says to me is, hey, what you think matters. What you have to say about this matters. And I think it's true for our children, right? When we take the time and when we apply specific tactics, to use that term, toward the way we listen, or we really think about we're intentional with that listening, that's really encouraging, right? So I think kids could get on board a lot easier with things that maybe aren't what they want or aren't the thing that they want, when they feel like, but hey, you know what? I know actually that these adults do listen to what I have to say. And there are times that what I have to say, that we do actually go in the direction that I want to in that specific situation. And so it's a deposit in a bank account here, right? You're putting a deposit. And every time we offer that space to really hear and seek to understand our children, I think we're really making a deposit. So when we do have to pull the I am the adult in this situation, and we do have to go in this direction, and there's really not a debate or really not an explanation, I think that then we have something in there to make a withdrawal.
Yeah. You've turned it more into a two-way thing, I recognize that the adult is listening to me, and they're being respectful. I'm going to do the same thing in turn. I'm going to listen to them and show respect.
Sure. And it doesn't always work that way, right? Yeah, but it is a modeling, right? We're modeling because
you're modeling.
I think the big question is what do we ultimately want? When we're working with kids, whether we're professionally or relationally, right? We're the parent or we're the teacher or we're the, adult in charge in that situation, what's our end game goal? Well, my end game goal is that I want kids that are problem solvers. I want kids that are empathetic to others. I want kids that are creative in their approach, right? And if I'm constantly dictating down and telling them this is what we're doing and this is, and next, I'm robbing them of chances to be part of collective problem solving.
Sure.
So when I listen,
you're teaching them to be very good listeners, right?
Very good compliers, I would say.
Very good
compliers. And that's a difference, I think.
Which is not what we're looking for in the workplace or in life. Yeah.
Right. I think there are people that would love for all of us to be good compliers.
It makes me think of a story of when I worked in ropes courses. We would often get parents out as volunteers to help and help with the kids. And you'd often get a kid who is a little hesitant about going all the way to the top, right?
Sure.
And then you'd get a parent saying, you need to get to the top. Get up there, quit your whining. And those moments are always so hard for me because I'm not the kid's parent, but I also know that pressuring this kid to do something they don't want to do, what is that telling them? So we started working with parents beforehand saying, hey, this is about their kid's choice. This isn't about getting to the top. It's about them making a choice for how they want to go and us respecting them for that choice. Mm-hmm. And that is really hard sometimes for parents to take in because they're like, well, I want my kid to do this. It's well, do you want your kid to listen to whatever someone is telling them whenever they're being told? Or do you want your kid to also have the autonomy to make a choice for themselves? Because that's what we're really working on here. Right. And they'd usually try and quiet down a little bit after that. But it was always a hard lesson, I think, for parents.
Mm-hmm. And especially, I think, in public settings, right? It's real hard to detach your children from yourself and to not see them as an extension of you. And we have a lot of societal beliefs about what kids should do and how they should act. And so when, you're the parent there and you're like, I feel like I need to succeed, so I need my kid to succeed, or I really care about them just obeying what I say right now in this moment because people might judge me. That's really hard to detach that and be like, they're my responsibility and they're also their own human. That could be hard.
Yeah.
We talked about my interaction with my kids and their relationship with their teachers. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older and going through this process, but 30 years ago, I just felt like my teachers were just focusing in on grades. And they probably weren't. They were making sure that I learned life skills and did all these other things. But it was just so reflective on just, did you pass or did you fail? Mm. And my interactions with my kids' teachers today, yeah, that's part of the game. That's part of their journey right now in terms of the effort and other things it takes to learn the material. But they are talking to them about life, and they're talking about the next steps in their lives and the next things that need to happen to them. And yeah, we're talking, you need to turn in this essay about this thing, but it turns more into just this dialogue and this listening and their understanding of what's next for them and how they're doing what they're doing intentionally through schooling is really just to set them up for this diverse understanding of life, and not just being told that you need to get A's and B's, but also like how you get that and why that's important and how that carries you forward for the rest of your life. I know all those things were tied into that, that one concept of not just being told what to do and just doing it just because, but that there's reasoning behind it. When you sit down with people that are working with kids and you're going through this concept of
compliance,
thank you. So we're not looking to create humans that are just compliant on what the adults tell them to do to a certain degree, right? We're looking for some autonomy, some independence there. What are some of the tactics that you utilize through the realms of listening, that you help teach other people? What are some of those tactics that you use?
Sure. So kids are being directed all day long. Right? Go here, sit here, let's go, stand up, sit, grab this, put that away, talk, don't talk, right? Like that. I mean, that is just a constant all the time. And we're really good as adults, generally speaking, at telling, right? And we can do it in a nice soft tone, but it's still like, if we're just, and they just get that all day long. And I know that my kids get that all day long from me some days, right? Of just like, we're going here, we're doing that, put your shoes on, take your coat off, hang your coat up, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, that kind of just directive all the time. And so one of the activities that I do with groups, parents and other educators, we talk about curiosity questions. And so it's a way slow down, right? I think anytime we're listening to kids or really trying to engage with kids, it's just, we have to slow down. And that's hard as adults to really pause, but to stay curious. So for example, I might say to a kid, instead of, put your shoes on, because we're trying to get out the door, I might say, like, put your shoes on. I might just stop and say, we're going to the grocery store. What might you need to get ready to go? And suddenly, like, I think that can be a real encouraging moment for a kid of like, A, you believe that I know what we need to do to get out the door. And B, when a kid says,
the confidence piece.
When a kid says like, oh, I should probably put my shoes on. Like, great. Okay. You have 5 minutes to do that or whatever. Just that tweak, just that change in staying genuinely curious. Like, I wonder what's going to come out of this kid's mouth, because I could really be thinking, I would love for them to say, put shoes on. But if it's my oldest, it's going to be like, well, we should probably pack snacks and we should probably bring extra blankets, because you never know if it'll be cold. And we also probably, I'll put all the library books in the bag in case we say, and I'm like, oh, how many of those things can you do in 5 minutes? Because but really, like, it's sometimes it is really fascinating to see, like, to hear what comes out of their mouth. But we do that activity. We do some role playing. We have adults line up and all take slips of paper that have just directive telling on there. Get your shoes on, brush your teeth, put your laundry away. The things that we tend to tell. And I give them some options. Like, you can be as theatrical with this as you like in your delivery of this directive. And we have a kid, a person who wants to role play as the child, who walks down the line and just hears the directive all the way down the line, kind of representing what it might feel like to be a kid all day long, right? To hear these directives. And we could do some reflection. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What were you deciding about yourself, about this adult? And then I hand the adults curiosity questions, which are whatever directive they said, just tweaked a little bit. That's more of an ask. It's more of a genuine, like, hey, it's bedtime. What are the 3 things we always do at bedtime? Oh, right. Oh, brush teeth. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I go do that. Right. And so then they get a chance to practice that curiosity question. The same volunteer that was the child gets to walk down the line and hear the questions. And then we get to debrief that. And every time, it doesn't matter what group, it doesn't matter if they're teachers or camp staff or parents, every time they're like, oh, man, by the end of that first lineup of directives, I was just ticked. Like, in fact, some people are like, I just stopped listening. I don't even know what those last 3 people said. I just shut off. Some people are like, man, I feel terrible. I don't feel like I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do anything right. Just constantly being told what to do. By the end of the second round, it's just And even the adults, when we debrief with them and they're like, it just doesn't feel good to constantly be like, do this, do this, do this, do this. But when I can pause enough and actually listen to what the response is about, hey, what do you think might be most helpful here? We're about to go in the grocery store. What kind of behavior do you think would be the most helpful for us to get what we need and get out of there? Let's talk. Let's have a 5-minute conversation before we leave this car, instead of just me turning in the back and saying, we're going to the grocery store. You need to behave. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? You need to behave? I mean, isn't running through the aisles behaving? It's a behavior.
Behave like what? Yeah.
So to help adults really get clear on what exactly is their purpose, what are they trying to get to, what are they trying to accomplish, and can we just flip that tell a little bit to stay genuinely curious, and to kind of direct our kid to like, I believe that you know the right thing here, or what it is that we need to accomplish. I think that just it empowers adults to be like, oh, that's it. I can just switch. It's not this whole overhaul of my whole parenting. It's just, I can still expect my kids to put shoes on. Yes, you can still expect your children to put shoes on, right? But you can also get to that end in a way that's maybe more cooperative, maybe more encouraging to the kid, maybe more, right, getting to your ultimate goal of what kind of kid you're trying to raise.
Yeah. Karen had taken that tactic from you, and we've been trying it with our older kid, and she's responded really well to it because she's 6, and instead of saying, put your shoes on, get your jacket, where's your water bottle? It's more of, okay, we're leaving in 10 minutes to go to school. What do you need to have ready for you? And it takes the burden off me as a parent, right? But it puts kind of the ownership on her being like, oh, I can do this. And for the most part, she does it, or, she'll ask for help if she needs help with something, right? The idea of, okay, I'm owning this now. I can do this.
Yeah. And I will say that some of the feedback I get sometimes is like, well, I tried that and it didn't work.
Sure.
And to which point I'm like, well, I think the question again goes back to, what's your ultimate goal? What are you trying? Yes. Was it frustrating in that moment that you were like late for the whatever that you're trying to? Of course, that's part of parenting. It's frustrating when it doesn't work the way that you have it kind of scheduled out or mapped out. And it's a long game, especially in parenting, much shorter, obviously, in education, or even shorter in camp situations. But keeping that big why in mind, like, what's your long game? What are you ultimately trying to accomplish? I want kids that can take ownership of things.
I want to go this route. Is listening integrated into parenting more than ever before? Should it be integrated? Is it being integrated? And Beth, I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
I think people definitely are more aware that of, like we've talked about, of like that maybe that they weren't, of all the times they weren't listened to, or at least when they didn't feel like they were being listened to, because it doesn't have to be true to feel real. So, I mean, we've all felt not listened to. So I think that's definitely at the forefront. And again, I'll go back to like, we can swing to this extreme, which I think happens sometimes. And I could be guilty of it too, of like, okay, I want to listen more. Listening doesn't equal doing whatever the person says. And we have that conversation in our family, right? Like we'll have a conversation or a family meeting, and we'll ask for input on a decision that we're making as a family. And if it doesn't go the direction, especially my oldest, we've gotten a lot of like, but you didn't listen to me. I said that this is what I wanted. You didn't listen to me. And so really making that distinction about like, we can all be better listeners to our kids. I think in some spaces that doesn't equate appeasing or then doing whatever the thing is that they might want. I think there's more information about better strategies and better tools to be better listeners. And I think sometimes, like anything, we can go to extremes. To answer your question, like, yes, I think it's heightened to people's awareness. They're like, kids, we could emancipate them from this, like, I'm big, you're little mindset, right? We could actually, right, like have a conversation with them that includes mutual listening and respect. That doesn't mean we're still adults.
Made me think of something that happened with Anna and I yesterday or 2 days ago at the store. We were waiting for a script to get filled from the pharmacy, So we're walking around and looking at stuff, and all the Easter stuff is out and all the Easter toys are out. She's like, I love this. This is so great. Can we get this? And no, we're not getting that, right? But instead of being like, no, we're not getting that, I go, oh, isn't this thing cool? Like, what do you love about this? Mm-hmm. And, getting into it, I'm like, I think this is really cool too. We're not getting this right now though, right? So I'm acknowledging that it is cool, but I'm also saying there is a limit where this is not coming home with us today. And by showing that I'm listening to her, she goes, okay, I feel listened to. And the answer is no. And I'm okay with that.
Isn't that how we would really expect to interact with each other in a professional setting? Right? If you were sitting in a boardroom or sitting around a table or in a virtual meeting and somebody had this wild, crazy idea that you were like, that sounds ridiculous, but you're not going to say necessarily in a professional setting like that or in a collegial setting, not like, nope, maybe you would, but you might be like, let's yes and that. Yes, I hear what you're saying. And, right? And so what you're doing is you're offering the same level of respect to your daughter that you would offer to a client or to a colleague, where you would hear a thing that you would internally be like, absolutely not. But you would say, like, well, say more about that. Or, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Let's think about what might be the downside of that idea. Or you might have some other you might kind of stay curious, even if you're like internally not, but you might at least like go down that road with them. We don't often offer that same common courtesy to our kids that we do to the people that we are professionally, or even our spouse, potentially, or partner, or other adults in our lives, right? And so to answer the question about like, is it more aware, like, is it more listening, becoming more parenting? I think some of it is just awareness that, wow, our kids actually kind of are deserving of the same level of respect in response that we would give to another adult that we're interacting with.
Absolutely.
One of the things Brett and I talked about was, to a certain degree, is this generational parenting piece. This is just a broad brush assumption from a couple of mid-40s dudes sitting here going, well, I wonder what this was like in the 20s and in the 50s and in the 70s, whatever it is. So here we go. Here, follow me on this journey. Our assumption is that parenting 100 years ago was filled with a large level of fear. If you don't do this, this will happen to you. And what did the parents get out of that? The thing got done. Whatever needed to happen was done. You didn't talk about it. You didn't talk back. You didn't have to work any harder at it than what you just fired out. Maybe it was very cut and dry back in the day of why it needed to get done. So there was an accountability there. When you talk to your kids about putting their shoes on, instead of just telling them that you just need to do it because I said so, or because of a fear-based thing or whatever it is, this directive, if you ask them what they need to do before they leave the house, there's an accountability piece to that. What does this all mean? Where am I going with this? There is a path of, well, I just got up every morning at 4 and I did my chores and I did these things and then I needed to go to this and I went on my way. Well, how did you get there? Likely I was just told that this is what I needed to do and there are going to be consequences if I didn't do it. Those consequences may have been personal. Those consequences may have been the cows died. I don't know what it was, but like there were real life consequences. Today, there's a lot less of that. The consequences have been reduced, perhaps. The accountability is still there.
Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
So I want to go back to encouragement for a minute, because I think that accountability and agency are really deeply tied into what you're talking about. So yeah, 100 years ago, maybe the overall societal norm was like, if your adult says do it, you do it. The end, right? Because that adult's telling you to do that.
Yeah, period.
And guess what? There was also way more opportunities for agency, for self-efficacy in a kid, because you know what? That kid would do what the adult said, but then also they'd be like, hey, walk a mile to town by yourself, go pick up the chicken from so-and-so and come back, right? And so I would listen potentially to what my adult said because they tell me to do this thing right now and that's fine. And I will just fall under line of that authority. Because guess what? I had so much other freedom and so much other autonomy in so many other parts of my life, like so many real responsibility, right? And in so many other parts of my life that like maybe that was the trade-off. When we take away agency and autonomy from kids in practical ways, and then we also take away, right? We say like, I'm the adult and I say do this and don't do that. And we'd squeeze them from each side. You can't go here without me. You can't do that without me. You're not allowed. You can't touch a knife. You can't pour your own milk. You can't whatever. And also, when you put your shoes on right now. And I'm going to say so. Well, that's a big squeeze. What encouragement is there? What am I actually capable of? Anything? I'm just, right? I don't have any real responsibility. There's no real, like, to your point of consequence. It's not like, hey, take your brother and take your 3 younger brothers and go somewhere else because I need to, like, bake a bunch of bread and whatever. You're in charge, 12-year-old, of everything. That doesn't exist anymore. Right. And so I think there's got to be a give and take somewhere.
I love that. That makes so much sense to me, of that squeeze of what was consequence. Well, the consequence and the accountability was perhaps very real. Well, our society today, we've taken away any consequence, really. It's just totally shifted. It's shifted. So now if you don't have any consequence, or you don't have any adversity per se, and I'm telling you what to do all of the time, holy moly, look at that funnel we just shoved you through for the majority of your life and those developmental years. If we open it up and we listen to you and we ask questions, and we can tie that back to how you listen to us, and we can open that up a little bit more, you start to create the accountability. You start to bring back the consequences, that instead of me just telling you to put your shoes on because we're going to the grocery store, if you don't, you got dirty, cold feet. Right? That's the extreme, right? Or you stub your toe.
If my daughter brings every single library book plus snacks for 40 people plus, whatever, and then doesn't put a coat on, because that's not the thing that was in her lineup of what she needed to do to get ready to go out the door. Yeah. It's like, oof, that stinks.
Yeah, it's cold out there.
Right. So if we start to open up that squeeze a little bit, how we communicate, how we listen, and how we interact with children, we can open that back up again a little bit and start to create some of that dialogue. And it doesn't create the rigid response. It creates the softer response, and it creates this dialogue and this comfort level where you're easing through life a little bit more versus just rigid.
Or maybe, if I may, think even that more cooperative response, right? We talk about soft. Yeah, soft, I think, but what I really want for my kids is I want to cooperate with them. I want to operate in a teamwork kind of way. And so I strongly believe that everybody wants to belong and feel their sense of significance, right? They want to know where they fit, and they want to know what they can contribute. And we have to let kids have space to contribute something meaningful, even if it's them deciding what it is they need to get themselves out the door, right? If that's the most I can offer them that day, because maybe I'm not going to send them into town by themselves, at 5 and 7 for milk or whatever. But, right. So I got to give it to them somewhere. Yeah.
And tying that into the other piece was we talked about the workplace and how we interact with each other as adults. In my relatively short lifetime, I've been in those rooms where no, that's a bad idea, or this is the way it's going to be. I've been there. And then I've also seen it evolve to if you're going to talk to people that way, they're not going to work for you anymore. Yeah. They're going to go do their own thing. They're going to go somewhere else. So yeah, it is directly related to the workplace, and it's adult to adult interaction too. You can see how it strings together as how you're raised or how your parent or how you're taught does lead you to these work environments that are probably a little bit more conducive to where people want to be and want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these skill sets that we're talking about don't apply just to an adult working with children. They apply in so many different areas in our lives. Yes. And I think we've seen that come in through several different episodes now that we've done, where it's that we're talking about this in this arena, but it applies in so many different arenas. And I think that's why this is so much fun to do and fun to talk about with folks. Yep. Beth, one of the things we're talking about is why, and the benefits of applying some of these tools or trying some of these techniques. And you talked about, what we want to get out of it. Going back to some of maybe just the more immediate things, how do kids respond differently when they're listened to? What kind of things do you see?
On a very small scale, I think there's something about the way that they their posture. I mean, this in a very practical, like tangible way. Like this morning I had a conversation with Ellie. She's our oldest. And I told her what I was doing today. And I said, they want to ask me questions about, how can we be better listeners to kids, and how can we, maybe elicit better listening from kids. And I'm like, well, what do you think? And it was kind of this moment of like, what do I think? Right? Like, you tell me, you're the kid, so how can I be a better listener to you? And there was kind of this like, and she got her teacher voice on. She has a teacher voice, and she got her, well, let me actually, thank you for asking, let me tell you. And she began to kind of list out, some ways that I could be, she had a quite long list of ways that I could be a better listener to her. But again, it goes back to that, like, when do we ask someone, what do you think?
Yeah.
In any space, it's like, oh, me? When you sent me an email, right? And it's like, oh, who, me? You want to know what I think about this? I think there's something of just your whole posture changes. And she had some great points. She said, when I want to say something to you and you're talking with dad, like you're having a meeting, sometimes we'll be like, we're having a meeting. Sorry, we can't talk. We're having a meeting. So like when you guys are having your meetings, she said, and we want to say something to you, you tell us to hold our thoughts. She said, well, I think you could do a better job of holding your thoughts, because when you want to say something to me and I'm in the middle of something, you want me to listen right now. And I'm in the middle of stuff too. And I have important stuff to do too. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah,
Oh,
like,
man, that's great.
And so I think
so good.
You're right.
I think there's something about, like, when you ask, like, what happens? Something happens is there's like again, it goes back to like, oh, you think I'm capable of answering this? Oh, you think I have something to say about this? And gosh, like, don't we all benefit when we get different perspectives from different people? Don't we all benefit when we get to do, the windows versus the mirrors, right? The mirrors reflect us, and the windows we get to see into someone else's experience. And I would have never thought of that. I would have never pointed that out. I'm keenly aware of all the ways that I can improve as a parent without asking my children. But I think just the asking is like, oh, that's what matters to you. Whew, okay.
That's so great. Well, and she she gave you a glimpse into what she's trying to deal with when she's in that situation, which is, you would not have gotten that information otherwise. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So when we ask, right, I think, and it goes back to like, as adults, I think lots of adults constantly have running through their head all the things they could be doing better or differently. Or that's just me, maybe, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of people that kind of have a ticker tape going of like what they could be doing better. But gosh, when I ask my kid, that's what she really would help her. That what's really the thing that gives me, that pushes that up to the top and goes, oh, I had all these things I thought I could do, but I didn't even ask the people I'm working with what would be most beneficial to them. Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that just customer service? Isn't that just client, that you have talked about previously? Like, oh, so all these things I thought were important. Maybe it's just that one thing, and I can focus all my attention, energy on how I could maybe improve this one area.
Yeah. Asking someone what they want, right, and giving them a choice it's pretty big. Yeah.
Right.
Goes a long way.
So I think going back to when we give space to truly listen, right, to our kids, it builds back some of that capability, some of that encourage, like, oh, I have a significant role here that we have kind of, our society has kind of stripped away from kids little by little, to kind of that previous conversation of like, we've just taken, in the name of safety or in the name of whatever, we've taken away until they have no space to prove they're capable of lots of things. Right. And so when we really like seek to understand what they think, it builds back some of that. Like, oh, I am capable. I have something to contribute. I have a significance here. Right. What I say does matter to some level.
Well, I realize we're running up on time too. So yeah, thank you so much, Beth, for joining us today. And Drew, are there other...
I'm not letting her go,
I was going
Brent.
to say, Drew, there's other things that you probably want to ask.
Beth, I don't know what your heart out is right now, but I've got 3 minutes, I believe. And I have one topic, and I want to hear your feedback on this. So you're not saying goodbye yet. We're not doing our outro. Beth, the cell phone.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot.
I am bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because, Brant,
we forgot to talk about that.
This.
You're right.
I know, which is why I take copious amounts of notes, and which is why I sometimes it doesn't look like I'm paying attention because I'm thinking about the next thing. I caught myself 2 nights ago asking my children how their day was and what were some of their highlights and what were some of the things that they struggled with, asking my children how their day was while staring at my... I'll start. I was about to drop an F-bomb in there. While staring at my effing cell phone. I was staring at my cell phone while asking my children how their day was. And I stopped and I put it down and I set it off to the side. And then I looked at them in the eyes and I said, I'm sorry. Let me start that over again. How was your day? How are things going? Beth, talk to me. Talk to me about what you've seen in those conversations with the world of the cell phone and what that impact has with listening and interacting with children as an adult.
Can I sidestep that just for a moment? Because I think it's connected. Okay, so It's a problem, period. It's a problem for me. It's a problem. It's just a constant, ever-present problem or challenge. Maybe a hurdle. I think in anything that's coming to me on my phone, right? Any email, any message, any text, any other thing that's coming to me through that phone. And this is going to sound like the obvious, but like it can wait only in the sense that like it's still there. I have this catalog of questions, of things to respond to, right? That will be waiting for me there. My kids don't have a tactic to get my attention that way. There's no catalog. There's no place, like my children don't email me when they have a request or that I can kind of prioritize and put in and then not forget about it and make sure I star it or put it whatever list or whatever. I think that's been a huge for me, unless we have built in space in our family for them to like, which we try to do in like a family meeting type of format that we do pretty regularly, that's a space where like their concern can kind of rise to the top and be, like enter into that like notification world. Otherwise they have no space for that. There's no way. And so then I just get the mom, right? They have to be louder. They have to be louder than whatever dings or buzzes or flashy things are happening in this phone. And so, yes, of course, like being present, looking in eyeballs, putting the phone down in a way, all of that. But I think also like, when we talk about removing something, what's the where do my kids feel like we have built into our time together, time that they know, no matter what, like they're going to get airtime, right? And whether that's dinner or whether that's a family meeting or whether that's a bedtime, like, what do you want to talk about right now? Right? Whatever that routine is, I think like they get no notification bubbles. They get no space to like take their concern and like put it on my inbox. I know that's a little out of like the cell phone conversation, but I think it like of thinking about like what's the family inbox look like? Where's the requests or the challenges or the problems? Yeah. Where do those live so they don't get lost in the whirlwind of every single other person that wants my attention right now?
Yeah.
No, I think it directly ties into it because it's again, like anything else, you have to break some habits or build some new habits. You have to create tools. You have to open up space and then put in a new tool, all the things we've talked about, but with the cell phone. And I'm of a generation that didn't have cell phones growing up, but it was the TV. It was the newspaper. It was all those other things that parents just want to just have in their hands or whatever it is that's occupying their time that's not giving your children that time. We'll keep it with the cell phones now, but I think it could span a couple generations in that sense of, I'm busy right now doing this thing. I have a newspaper in front of my face, or I'm staring at the TV, whatever that was. And today you can do all three. But it's that, I like what you said. It's that, like everything else, putting your shoes on and that tactic of how you go about doing that and creating that listening platform, you have to be able to say, and like you said, mom.
And then my response is not going to be so pretty when I get to this 26th mom, because I'm going to be like, what? Stop it,
Right. Yeah. And then you freak out, right? But it's building in that space. It's an intentional act. It's an understanding. I like what you said about, what are those times? We have those times as a family.
Yeah.
I want them more. The kids want them more. And we're not very good at it because you get into your habits. But boy, when you set up that time that there's no distraction and you can just listen and talk with each other, regardless of the age, it's a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
And I could pinpoint them in the last 6 months exactly when they were. Because that's unfortunately how infrequent they are, just because of busy lifestyles and all the other things. But when they do happen, it's like magic. Well, how do you capture that? How do you create that? And how do you intentionally create those times?
And what are the structures? Because we can just tell adults all day long, put your phone down, put your phone down, put your phone down, put your phone down, right? And I think all of us understand. I mean, I think most of us get it. Like, yeah, we're probably, on it, guilty, right? On it, on
guilty.
it too much.
Yeah,
but
guilty.
But again, it's the replacement. So then what? I think we have a group, a group, generation, whatever you want to call them, of adults that like can put the phone down, but then what do I do? Right? How do I engage in that conversation? What do I even say? What do I even like? What do we talk about? So like having a structure of like, you can replace this phone in your face with like, here is a protocol. Here is a list of like, what did you notice? What do you wonder today? What are your rose, your thorn?
Mm-hmm.
What do like, what's the specific thing to give someone some kind of structure or scaffold to then like know what to do instead? Because if you just say, put your phone down and engage with your child, like, honestly, there are people that don't actually know how to do that. So it's not a will thing. It's a skill thing, right?
So it's replacing that. Right. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
like
I don't,
that.
Yeah. And so I think like giving people a very specific, like, here might be a thing. Like when I was in the classroom, I would try to like, when I sent my weekly email, I would try, because I was a middle school teacher. So I would try to send an email like, this week, ask your student these 3 questions and like put them in there. Hopefully somebody opened that. I don't know, like the 3 people open that email, but that they would be like, at least give them something to like, like ask them about these things. They're middle schoolers. If you just say, how's your day? They're going to be like, fine. And then that's it. So like, ask them about these things, ask them about this project or about this discussion we had today or whatever. So we like the replacing, right? Like giving people something else to latch onto.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us and spend with us. It's been a really great conversation, and we could just keep going. It's been wonderful having you. So
thank you. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Brant, that was incredible.
That was really, she's good, right? It's good. That conversation could have just kept going and going.
All right. Well, that was an incredible conversation. Beth is amazing, and I learned a ton, which is one of the goals of this podcast. Brant, what are your takeaways from this episode?
Man, I feel like so many times I try to overthink things. I'm really good at overthinking things. But it just comes down to what she was really just saying, like, how do you want to be listened to, right? How do you apply that to your kids? And that we might not always have those, but there are those things out there and we can keep practicing them.
The concept of this accountability and the squeeze and how she just laid it out so simply that they're talked at all day long, regardless of the age. In our general American school society and ways, they are told to sit down, get up, move, learn, read, do all these things all day long. And then they get home, and let alone if they have sports or other things that they're doing. And then they get home, and what do? Put your stuff away, sit down, eat dinner, wash your hands, go take a shower, blah, 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 blah. My God, can you imagine as an adult going through your life like that? And some people do, and it's not fun. Very rarely do people enjoy that.
Yeah, the autonomy and agency. Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So what if we did, like you just said, what if we changed it a little bit? What if we opened it up, asked them some questions, and give them some of that autonomy in their lives to make some of those decisions and to, work with consequences to a certain degree.
And it's not going to be perfect, but it's them getting a chance to practice that, right?
It's not supposed to be perfect, right? Like, we don't want it to be perfect. I feel like adults, parenting aside, but just adults with youth today, perfection is the goal, and so if it's not perfect, perhaps we slide down a hill that we don't want to be in. Man, I learned a ton.
Yeah, me too. It was good.
Cheez-It.
I'm eating Cheez-Its.
We need to talk about our next episode. Yeah, you want to ask me what's next?
All right, Drew. What do we got coming up next?
Coming up next, Brant, we here in the Midwest at this particular time that we are recording some of these podcasts, it is the entrance of springtime. And for those that live in this upper Midwestern world that has harsh winters and snowfall and cold and all those things, but there is something about the sounds of spring. For some of us, it's the peepers. You don't know what that is. It's a tiny little frog coming out of the hibernation. It's the sounds of the birds. It's the gentle breezes versus the harsh breezes. You know, what does that do to us? Does it rejuvenate us? Does it impact us? Does it influence the way we go about our day? And if we hone in our listening skills and we paid attention to spring a little bit more, would it influence our day a little bit better? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Special thanks to our guest today, Beth Keller. In the description of this podcast, you'll find more information about this topic and a list of our sources, including Beth's website. This podcast is created and produced by Drew Richmond and Brant Christofferson. Editing by Brant, that's me, and music by Drew.
That is also me.
Hey, we'll see you next time, Drew.
Brant, it was a fantastic conversation. Always great to talk with you.
Always good.
Let's wrap this one up.